Hello and welcome to Spectator TV. I'm Cindy Yu, the Spectator's assistant editor. Earlier this week, the Olympian and world champion in dressage, Charlotte Dujardin, announced that she was going to be pulling out of Team GB just days ahead of the Paris Olympics. This was after a shocking video emerged of her treating a horse rather appallingly. This is the clip and you may find it distressing.
She's so hitting hard.
Now, Charlotte Dujardin has been suspended from the sport and definitely not competing in the Olympics anymore for about 6 months while the investigation is going on into her behaviour. And joining me to discuss this issue now is Dominic Dyer, animal welfare campaigner and writer, as well as Alice Plunkett, who is an equestrian journalist and former jockey and event rider. Dominic and Alice, thank you so much for joining Spectator TV. Now, Alice, to start with, can I get your reaction upon first hearing the news of Charlotte Dujardin's withdrawal from Team GB just days ahead of the Olympics, and upon first seeing the video which has got her into so much trouble?
Well, I was as shocked and appalled as everybody else in the equestrian community and outside of the equestrian community. Probably within the equestrian community, I was shocked for the content and what I was witnessing, but also who the perpetrator was, because she's somebody that has been held in high regard for a number of years since she burst on the scene in 2011. She's someone who, it was my understanding from seeing her work at home and seeing the setup that she has at home, that her system was one where the horse was front and centre, is front and centre. And that, so it made it all the more shocking because it went against everything that I thought I knew about Charlotte Dujardin.
And Dominic, yet is not the first story of animal abuse we've had in equestrian sports, not even the first this year. We've had previous examples of horses being beaten with tree branches or being punched. How surprised were you?
Well, I think it is shocking footage for the reasons Alice has stated. This was someone that's held in very high esteem, a very, very successful Olympic athlete with a wonderful track record of success. And you would have thought that they would never find themselves in this situation. I understand the video is about 2.5 years old. I understand the individual that released it, talking through their lawyers, thought long and hard as to whether they should release this. And obviously they challenged themselves as to whether what was going on the day was right or wrong. From a layperson's perspective, it looks shocking. There's no question about it. There is definitely, it looks like real cruelty there in relation to the horse. I think the concern I have is to whether this just opens up that much broader debate we're having about equestrian sports that are very successful, generate a lot of money, sponsorship, betting, television rights and everything that go with it. But how much of a priority is animal welfare when it comes to protecting horses involved in all of these activities? And I think we live in a 24-hour social media world. And if these sports are to continue and have a license to continue, they must maintain the confidence of the vast majority of the British public and the public around the world, wherever these events are taking place, particularly when it comes to events like the Olympics, of course. And I think when we see incidents like this, it really does dent public confidence. And I think it needs to be a period of reflection for the whole of the equestrian industry about what we can do to ensure actually that the first priority in any event is to protect the welfare of the horse.
In my experience, Dominic, we've got. I've been involved with training horses all my life. I'm an equestrian journalist, but the guiding light in my whole career has been my passion for the horse. If you'd said to my parents at the beginning of my school that I was going to make horses my life, they would have been furious because they would have said, well, there's no way. But the passion for the horse for me has been the driving factor. And that's taken me to 4 Olympic Games. It's taken me to all sorts of extraordinary places and on a journey, but because I love the horse. And all the different zones that I've been in and areas that I've been in, I've been totally confident that that passion for the horse has been front and centre and the motivation of everyone. This morning, I was at a charity event, which was why I was late, with children riding ponies. And the thing that the horse and humans and that relationship that goes back 2,000 years has been throughout history, has been one of partnership, not domination. When you look at agriculture, war, transport and sport, humans and horses have worked in symbiosis. And watching these children today was really special. It really struck me, and I wanted to bring it out, is that, these children are coming out in the morning. They've got to think outside themselves. They've got to think about the care of the horse. They've got to challenge themselves in terms of bravery. They've got to partner with another animal. And that's a stepping stone all the way through to the extraordinary things we see in the Olympics. What Charlotte's done, as you said, has broken the trust of people looking on the equestrian world that we have the social license to do that. But that partnership of humans and horses is an extraordinary one. And it's one that brings mutual benefits. And I think, in terms of my kids, in terms of the charities that I'm working with, watching it, that is a fundamental thing that's entrenched in our human being, really, is our relationship with animals. But at the core of that has to be respect, structure, and an understanding that training is about stages. You wouldn't put your child who's in primary school in to do GCSEs. You wouldn't beat your child to get it to learn its A levels. And in the same way with your horses, you have a structured training program. And we have to have confidence and social license that those training programs are systematic and that the welfare of the horse is front and centre. And I really do believe that's the case, which is why the FEI, British Dressage, and the British Equestrian Federation have come down so hard on Charlotte, because that is at the core of everything. There is zero tolerance for this type of behaviour in equestrian sport, but also in terms of confidence in the social licence.
Yeah, I'd agree with everything you said. I think my concern would be that there is extreme pressure to get, good performances from horses, not just in dressage, but if we look at horse racing and hurdles and events, all the, the sporting activities that you're aware of and have been involved with. There is a concern, I think a genuine concern, that, that there's great pressure to get results. And, I'm worried, as many people are, that on the horse racing circuit, we still have hurdles that are too high. We still have too many horses sometimes racing around tracks like Aintree. The whip is used too liberally sometimes. And there's concerns that lots of people, breed horses, maybe far too many, than can actually compete effectively on the track. And many of those horses, retire early and end up in the food chain and things. So we know there's a darker side to the industry. I'm not saying everything you've spoken about, Alice, is absolutely right, because I can see your passion and belief, and it's terribly important. But I worry at times that maybe what we've seen with this video with Charlotte is just that she was under immense pressure, to get results, to maintain her ability to win medals. And on that basis, the horse paid the price. I don't know if that's a fair assumption, but that's a concern that many people have.
I think in this particular case, it wasn't about her performance. She was involved in training somebody else. So she was in a situation where she was training somebody else and she was involved with somebody else's horse. And I do not know what was going through her head to think that that was an appropriate way to improve that horse's performance, because I've never seen something like that. In terms of the whip, and racing, we've had 75,000 rides, and we had 592 whip offences. So that's 0.7%. There is systematic protocol in place to monitor exactly what you're talking about. And in the same way as with racing, when you're riding a horse to a fence, the small offence doesn't necessarily make it a safe offence. It's how the horse is trained, how the horse is produced, how the horse is presented to the fence. Often a small offence actually doesn't make it any safer, because the horse doesn't read it as well. And actually they're better if they jump a bigger fence. Soft ground often is a lot better than quicker ground, although visually perception may seem that's different. So I think as society changes, where we would have had 3 million horses in this country during the war, because we would have had horses going to war, horses for transport, we now have 1 million horses in this country for leisure. There's definitely a change in terms of how much contact we have with horses, and therefore how we can help people understand, and also how we can gain confidence from people who aren't involved with horses. As you said, social license and confidence is really important. How do I present the story that I know, the journey that I've been on, the visuals that I have seen, and how do we really make sure that the public has confidence that that is the case?
Sorry to interrupt the show, but if you enjoy what we do here at Spectator TV, then why not subscribe to the magazine as well? If you subscribe today, you get 12 weeks for just £12, plus a free £20 John Lewis and Waitrose gift card. You can sign up at spectator.co.uk/TV offer. Alice, can I get you to elaborate on the use of the whip? Because it's been reported since this Charlotte Dujardin story has broken out that the whip is a legal enhancement aid, is how one journalist in the Times put it. And then in dressage as well, there is a rule called the blood rule, where horses with fresh blood on them are eliminated from competing. I mean, the fact that even has to be a rule suggests some level of pain associated for the animal. And Charlotte Dujardin was did infringe that blood rule in 2019 at European Championships. How do you justify those rules?
That blood rule with Charlotte Dujardin was to do with the bit. It wasn't to do with the whip. So the blood rule is, so sometimes there might be a situation where a horse might bite his tongue or the bit might pinch, and that will cause a little bit of blood in the mouth. The infringement that Charlotte Dujardin experienced was literally a tiny bit of blood, but there's zero tolerance for that, which is right, because the bit must not be fitting properly. There would be a situation potentially the majority of that will come around the mouth, not around anywhere else. To draw blood on a horse with a whip is not something that, you can't do that. It would be nigh on impossible to do that. So that is not a situation. The blood rule doesn't relate to the whip. That's two separate issues. So you've got issues around bitting, and then you've got separate issues around the whip. So the whip, and it's something I've been considering and talking about a lot. Whenever I get on a horse on a daily basis, I will get on a horse carrying a stick. It's partly to do with balance. It's partly to do with the fact that I'm 11 stone and my horse is 550 kilos. I would never turn my stick over and hit a horse, but I might tap him down the shoulder. It might help me in terms of moving forward. The whip that Charlotte was using was a lunging whip, and that's for an exercise that you do where you take the horse's saddle off and you have a rope from you to the horse's mouth, and then you have a whip that's long because it goes, so you're acting a triangle. So you're guiding the horse forward, but the whip should never come in contact with the horse. So the way she was using it was completely inappropriate and not how it was guided to be used. That's not, I'm not expressing myself very well, but that is not how it was meant to be used. So you can use a stick in a responsible way and as an aid whilst you're riding a horse. The whips that they're using in racing, that's constantly under review, constantly under debate. They're padded whips that make a noise, and we can't grade in terms of pain, but if you got hit by one, we did a thing on it before, it's a very different type of stick. So that is constantly under review. It's something that riders have carried throughout history, and it's being reviewed all the time, and the use of it is constantly monitored.
Well, I think we come back to the changing nature of public attitudes on animal welfare and animal protection. It's what I spend a lot of my time doing across a whole wide range of issues on wild and domestic animals. And there's never a day where we don't get stories like this pop up in the UK around the world. And often they can be very emotive. I think what's changing, Alice, is you've got organisations like Animal Rising, for example. Whatever you might think of them, you've got really passionate young people coming together in a very powerful way, using social digital media and direct action to bring to attention their concerns about animal exploitation. And I think the whole equestrian industry is writing the firing line of that. So I think the worst thing the equestrian industry can do is try and sort of run away and shield itself, or try and just attack the people that raise concerns. I think you've got to embrace change. You've got to accept that actually some of what you've done in the past is not going to be acceptable in the future. That you might need to look at all of the training standards and the numbers of animals bred and the racetracks and the number of animals on the racetrack and the hurdles and everything, so that you can still maintain an effective, successful equestrian industry. But it must put the horse welfare at the top of its priority list. And I think people like you truly believe that. I'm not questioning that for a minute. But there are people within this sector, like any sector, that cut corners, that do things they should not do, that think they can get away with doing things they should not do. That's becoming increasingly difficult as we see these videos and pictures emerge. And then we come back to the impact it has on the individuals. I don't know what made Charlotte do this all those years ago. I don't know what's been going through her mind thinking, will this ever emerge, this video? Because I'm sure she's intelligent enough to think, my God, if it does, what's it going to do to my career? It's like a ticking time bomb. And it's gone off, and it must be really, really difficult for her. So I think, aside from the concerns about the welfare of the horse in that instance and her future career, we've got to think about her as an individual, because this could, have tragic consequences for anyone that's caught in this glare of publicity. What I hope will happen here is that she can find some time and space and support from people within the equestrian industry. I hope they don't all run away from her, because if you lose sponsors and you lose Sports Council funding and all of it, you suddenly can be very, very alone. She needs support. But what I do hope is if she gets that support, she can come back and say, listen, I made a mistake, but actually I want to put that right, but also to be part of that change of the equestrian industry going forward. Because, I don't want to see anyone else go through what I've gone through, if that's the word to use with her. Because there are lots of young athletes coming up that are probably looking, oh my God, is that going to happen to me? And what am I going to do? And it might actually put people off coming into equestrian sports. And I know that if you lost a lot of the equestrian sports industry, you'd lose a lot of all the funding and support and welfare around horses. The welfare situation could get a lot worse. We have many problems, as we know, with people not looking after horses. And in a cost of living crisis, we have many people who can no longer afford to pay to look after their horses. So we need all of this to be looked at. So I think this is maybe a moment to embrace change in a positive way, to look after her interests, but also maybe to learn from this incident as well.
I think as well, as you said, it has to be a lesson to anyone who considers stepping over the line. But I think I go back to what you said. We have very good governing bodies of equestrian sport. We have very good governing bodies across horses in society, whether it's the British Horse Society, whether it's British Equestrian Federation, whether it's the FEI. If you take, as you said, structured equestrian sport out of that, the governance, which at the moment calls culpability and calls people to account who make these mistakes. And she is being called to account because we as an equestrian community, and I'm calling that, are horrified by what we've seen. This, I can't say it's an isolated incident, but in terms of from what I've ever seen, I have never seen an elite athlete. And I've been in that British team set up a lot. And I've watched them get ready now for this Olympic Games. And I'm really proud of the incredible horsemanship, the incredible partnerships that we've seen working through that qualification process to go and showcase their skills and their partnerships on the biggest stage of them all at the Olympic Games. The reason she's been come down on so heavily is because there is zero tolerance, because there is a governing body, because there is governance. You take all of that away and then who knows what happens? But there is accountability when we're looking at British racing. So many changes are being made all the time. Look at the changes being made to the Grand National, the core of the fences, the review continually of moving the start, of changing the number of runners, of looking at how the fences are built, the profile of the fences, the ground. Please don't underestimate that this is something this isn't because Charlotte, this hasn't triggered horse welfare. That isn't, it's literally part of it without even knowing it. And now it's having to be a much more conscious thing because it's something that we have to present in a way that, as you said, gives us the confidence and the responsibility of social license.
Well, Alice, I also wonder about your opinion on the way that the industry has reacted to the story this week, because, you've mentioned these kind of regulatory bodies, but it's not just the story that's played out there, it's also played out on social media with a lot of people opining on it. I was struck earlier this week by Charlotte's previous mentor, Carl Hester, coming out and condemning what she has done. Just on a human level, it seems as though she's in the middle of an absolute storm right now. And that must be really, really painful. And do you think that the industry has gone too far almost in trying to say nothing to do with me, Gov, and Charlotte's being fed to the wolves?
Yeah, I know. I mean, as Dominic flagged up, there's two different things here. There's what will happen to her professionally in terms of the governing bodies, the FEI, British Dressage, and the British Equestrian Federation. But then there's this secondary thing of judge and jury on social media. This is hugely emotive. It's a very upsetting video. It's a video that triggers huge emotion in people quite understandably and makes people very, very angry. And how does she navigate that? How, apart from apologizing, saying she's ashamed, all the things that she said, nothing at the moment is going to be good enough for anyone who is very, very upset by these videos. And so I think it's time. I just hope she's got the right support around her. She's got a young daughter, and I am not condoning what she's done because it is completely wrong. But does that then define her as a human being and everything else? I don't know. I mean, we know that once momentum gets going on social media, it's a very, very scary place. And there are a lot of understandably upset and angry people. But it's when it gets very personal, it's a very scary truck that's on the roll.
Dominic and Alice, thank you so much for joining Spectator TV.